5 preseason questions for the LA Kings now answered. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also co-host of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that wraps up the night in the NHL. I co-hosted last night and will be co-hosting this Thursday through Saturday, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. The LA Kings are getting ready to take on the Anaheim Ducks on Thursday in Los Angeles. We'll have a preview of that game coming up, but we start with 5 burning questions about the LA Kings going into this season. What were my predictions at the time? How have things turned out? And was I right or wrong? This is for a show I did 8 months ago on July the 30th, which you can go back and check out if you like. All the shows are available for you in the archive. But let's get to question number 5 for the LA Kings. Will the Kings goaltending be better, worse, or the same as last season? I said at the time that I was confident that David Rittich would be a solid backup or 1B goalie to Darcy Kuemper's 1A, and there was no reason to believe that the position overall would be worse. I also said that I believe Darcy Kuemper would be as good as the team in front of him, and that meant that he should be at least okay. I pointed out how good Kuemper was in Colorado with a very good team in front of him when he won a Stanley Cup. As for the answer to those questions about the goaltending, well, 5 games left to go in the regular season. The Kings have clinched a playoff spot. They're likely going to be the number 2 seed in the Pacific, and I think I was mostly right about where the goaltending fit into where the Kings would finish this season. I said there was no reason to believe that David Rittich would be worse than last season. Unfortunately, he has been worse. David Rittich appearing in 24 games last season. So far this year, he's been in 31 games. And I would say he has the possibility of being in, I would say at most 2 more games the rest of the season. His win numbers are up slightly from a year ago, 15 wins this season to 13 last season, but he started more games. And because of that, he also has 7 more losses this season than last season. He lost 6 games a year ago, 13 losses this season. His numbers have not been up to par. Last year, a very solid 9.21 save percentage. This year, it's at 889. His goals against average last year, 215. This year, it's 2.71 goals allowed per game on average. He had 3 shutouts last season, 0 shutouts for David Rittich this season. So the backup position in net for the Kings has not been as good as it was a year ago. Meanwhile, Darcy Kuemper has been much improved from his season last year. If you don't remember, he was with the Washington Capitals, lost his starting job, eventually came over to the Kings in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. Now, he has appeared in more games this year than last year. 47 starts this season compared to 33 a year ago. His win numbers are way up. 13 wins last season, 28 wins so far this season, and he has fewer losses than he had last year. 14 losses last season to 11 so far this season. Not surprisingly, his save percentage has improved. It was at 890 last year. It's 921 this season. His goals against average also better. He was allowing 3.31 goals per game last season, 2.03 this season, and he's likely going to have 3 to 4 more starts to come for the LA Kings. So the numbers for Darcy Kuemper, a guy who lost his starting job in DC, he's gone from being a guy who lost his job to being a Vezina Trophy caliber finalist this season. So needless to say, Darcy Kuemper has been way better than I thought he would be, and he's been better than last year's number 1 goalie, Cam Talbot. Again, Kuemper this season, 28-11-7. Talbot last year for the Kings, 27-20-6. Kuemper, a 2.03 goals against average. Talbot was at 2.50. Kuemper, 921 save percentage. Talbot was at 913. Kuemper, 5 shutouts to Talbot's 3. So Not only is Darcy Kemper's numbers way better than his numbers were a year ago, also his numbers better than last year's number one starter for the LA Kings, Cam Talbot. So overall, as a team, the Kings' overall save percentage last year was at 912. This year, it's currently at 909. So a little bit of a slip as far as the goaltending combined. Last year, though, the goals against average was at 2.56. This year, it's better at 2.44. So if you recall last season, the Kings goaltending late in the year wasn't quite settled. Cam Talbot was 4-3 over his last 7 starts. His goals against average was around 3. His save percentage was under 900. This year, much better as far as going down the stretch. Darcy Kemper has been fantastic. Last 14 home starts, we talked about 2 or fewer goals allowed. So the Kings overall at the goaltending position, when you talk about the number 1 and the number 2 goalie, you could say, I guess it's a little bit of a wash because David Riddick has not been as good as the backup, where Darcy Kemper has been much better as the starter. But again, the number 1 goaltending position is in a much, much better place for the Kings than it has been in a while. And going down the stretch, Darcy Kemper has certainly left no doubt who the number 1 goalie is for the Kings going into the playoffs. The number 4 question for the LA Kings that I had going into the season: which of the younger players not named Quinton Byfield would have a standout season this year? So there were 6 other players that I had mentioned that were under 25 years of age, not named Quinton Byfield, and were expected to be full-time NHL players this year. The players were Akil Thomas, Alex Laferriere, Alex Turcotte, Brandt Clarke, Jordan Spence, and a possibility of Samuel Fagemo. Now, I'd said that I thought that Thomas and Turcotte would probably be finding their way in their first full NHL seasons this year, and I was looking forward to them having solid but not spectacular first NHL seasons. Well, Akil Thomas really hasn't been given much of an opportunity to show what he can do. He's only appeared in 23 games, mostly on the fourth line, 1 goal and 2 assists. As for Alex Turcotte, I think you'd have to say he's doing a bit better than most of us expected. I said that he would be just kind of finding his way as a pro. Now, he has been hurt a little bit lately, missed a handful of games here and there, but overall, I think a pretty solid rookie season for Alex Turcotte. 64 games, 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points, and he's been a valuable energy guy on that fourth line, doing some things that don't necessarily show up with his personal stats, but I think he's had a very positive rookie season. So Akil Thomas, not as well as expected because it hasn't gotten the playing time, but I think Alex Turcotte has been even better than expected. I said I thought Jordan Spence would likely be more of the reliable group from this group of young players because he had the most NHL experience. I did say that I would be surprised if he had a big jump from his numbers a year ago where he had 2 goals and 24 points, and that has been the case so far on the season. Spence just slightly better than last season's numbers. He does have a few games left, but he's got 3 goals and 25 points. So 1 more goal, 1 more point than he had all of last season. But I think turned out, he's had he didn't start well, but I think he's turned it around in the second half. I think overall, Jordan Spence has had a pretty solid sophomore season for the LA Kings. I said the 2 biggest candidates for breakout season amongst the Kings young players not named Quinton Byfield were Alex Laferriere and Brandt Clarke. And I said that I didn't expect Clarke to score as many goals as he did in his previous year in the AHL, but I thought he could get close in points. Now, he had 10 goals with the Ontario Reign last season, 5 this year for the Kings. As far as points, 46 points in the AHL last year, 31 for the Kings this year, so not quite as many points as I thought he might have. I did say I thought his numbers would definitely be better than Matt Roy, which is kind of the player he was replacing in the Kings as far as their defensive unit, somebody who left and somebody who was coming in. And he does have more points and more goals than Matt Roy did. Roy had 5 goals and he had 25 points. Clarke has 31 points on the season. So yes, more production from that position as far as a player that left and a player that's coming in. But I said I thought Alex Laferriere would be the Kings' young player, not named Quinton Byfield, that would have the most impact this season. I predicted 20 goals and 40 points, and early on, it looked like Laferriere was going to blow away my prediction. He had 12 goals all of last season. In the first 2 months of this season, he had 11. He had 23 points all of last season. In the first 2 months of this season, he had 20. Unfortunately, as you well know, he has cooled off quite a bit since then. He's at a total of 5 goals and 17 points since the first 2 months of the season. But as far as the overall prediction, I said 20 goals and 40 points. He's at 16 goals and 37 points. So on the whole, not a bad, sophomore season for Alex Laferriere. And hopefully next season can be a little bit more consistent throughout and can hit those 20 goals and 40 points coming up. All right, we have 3 more Kings burning questions to answer from the preseason. We also have a Kings Ducks preview coming up. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Then you need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feeling fuller longer. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether you're snacking at your desk or on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost. And if you love cracking open every shell with that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, 3 more burning questions to answer from the LA Kings from the preseason. And number 3 was, how would the Arthur Kaliyev situation be resolved? Seems kind of funny looking back on it now, but that was a big question going into the season. If you remember, Kaliyev was a restricted free agent going into the year. He had requested a trade. He wasn't happy with his role with the team. The Kings said they would try and accommodate him. And I had said I didn't really see him having a role with the Kings with younger, cheaper players like Alex Turcotte and Keel Thomas ready to get their chance to play. And I didn't see Kaliyev getting a top 6 role that he was likely going to need to put up the numbers that he was going to need to justify being in the lineup. And my prediction was the Kings would trade him before the season started. Well, things got complicated when Kaliyev was hurt in training camp, obviously killing his trade value. He would end up never playing another game for the LA Kings, claimed off waivers by the New York Rangers in January. He would play 14 games for New York, 3 goals, 1 assist before suffering a season-ending injury. So the Arthur Kaliyev saga didn't quite play out exactly like I thought it would with him being claimed off waivers, but I'm not surprised he didn't end up having a role with the LA Kings. My number 2 burning question for the Kings going into the season: will Quinton Byfield continue to progress as he takes on a bigger role? We all knew that Q was eventually going to be moved to center, but for him to be moved to center this season, I was concerned maybe it was a little bit too soon. He was just coming off his best season. I was worried maybe having him taking on that extra responsibility of playing the center position might hurt his growth and also cut back on his production, at least for this season. Here's what I had to say. I'm quoting myself from back in July. Quote, "So to answer the question, will he continue his progress? I think the obvious answer is yes. He is getting experience at a position the Kings ultimately want him at. Does that mean his numbers will go up this season? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bit of an adjustment period with Q, at least for the start of the season, that might affect his numbers at the end of the year. However, if he plays on its second line with Kevin Fiala, that should give him a lot of opportunities to get more of his more assists than he had last year, which was at 35, end quote. Well, I think it was pretty right on this one. There did seem to be a bit of an adjustment period for Q, and he certainly has gotten better, I think, as the season has gone along, at least from a production standpoint. Maybe not as dramatic as you would think when you look specifically at the numbers. First 41 games of the season for Quinton Byfield, he had 9 goals and 11 assists for 20 points. In the next 37 games since then, 11 goals and 17 assists for 28 points. So the numbers are up. And I think Q has definitely progressed as he has taken a bigger role with the LA Kings. And certainly I think he has shown that he has gotten better as the season has gone along. And then, of course, the next step next season would be to kind of continue his second half numbers we've seen this year over the entire season. And he'll be a definite impact player for the Kings. My number 1 burning question for the LA Kings going into this season was, How would head coach Jim Hiller put his stamp on this team? I had talked about how, with no disrespect intended for Jim Hiller, after 3 straight playoff losses to the Oilers in the first round, I thought the Kings needed some new ideas, some fresh perspectives, and I was skeptical about turning to this first-time NHL head coach and that was going to be the answer. And that answer will still, frankly, only ultimately be answered with the playoffs. Will he, Jim Hiller, get the Kings over the hump and get them some playoff success? I think signs are pointing to, I think, that likely happening in my mind, at least having a very strong possibility of happening. I'm feeling good about the Kings going into the playoffs for a variety of reasons. We'll get more into that when we actually do a Kings-Oilers first-round playoff preview. But I think Jim Hiller has put his stamp on this team. He has changed the way the Kings played on the penalty kill, a more attacking style on the PK. The numbers overall actually are a little bit down from last season, but they're still really good. Last year, the Kings were second in the entire NHL at the end of the season in the penalty kill department at 84.6%. This year, they're at 81.7%. It is down, but fifth in the NHL, so still a top 5 PK as they were a year ago. But the point was that the Kings felt that something needed to change from the way it specifically defended against the Oilers' power play, which was obviously a huge disadvantage for the Kings. So those changes have been made. Whether they will actually be a difference in the series or not, obviously remains to be seen. But the Kings had to make a change. They've made a change, and the PK still has been a top 5 penalty kill. Jim Hiller and GM Rob Blake talked about the team being more uncomfortable to play against. The Kings wanted to be bigger, stronger, more blue collar, going to the net, paying a price that would ultimately, be more of a playoff style of hockey. They go out and they make additions. Joel Edmondson, Tanner Jeannot, Warren Fogle, guys who are more blue collar, with Edmondson and Jeannot specifically, more size there. And I think the Kings have become more of a blue collar, hardworking, uncomfortable team to play against. I don't have any analytical stats I can share with you that would prove that. I'm going by the good old fashioned eye test. But to me, the Kings have been a more difficult team to play against. And I think they have been more blue collar in their quest to score goals, getting shots from the point, crashing the net, bodies and pucks to the net. And I think that mindset has been there. Also, keep in mind the Kings switched defensively from the 1-3-1 to the 1-2-2, and yet the defensive numbers have been just as good as last season. Last year, the Kings allowed 2.44 goals per game. That was second in the NHL. This season, the Kings are allowing 2.56 goals per game, third in the NHL. Actually, you know what? Reverse that. The Kings are second. You know what? I'm not sure. I'll have to double check my numbers. I think the Kings are second this year and were third last year. I'm almost positive. So the Kings have changed their defensive style a little bit, and it's gotten a little bit better. But the question is getting off of that 1-3-1, being a little bit more proactive on the defensive style of things, and still keeping the standard that it was a year ago, and that has been the case. Of course, the one place that the Kings have come up short is the power play. The Kings currently 28th in the NHL out of 32 teams. They were at 15.8% going into today's action. Last season, the Kings were 11th in the NHL in the power play at 22.6%. So while most of the other things I think that the Kings were looking to implement under Jim Hiller have been, if not better, at least the same, that clearly, as I'm sure you all know, is the one area where it has not improved. Matter of fact, it's gotten pretty dramatically worse, and that is the power play. However, overall, I would say it is very hard to be dissatisfied with the stamp that Jim Hiller has put on this team, with the way the team has performed under him. And his overall tenure with the team has been, at least during the regular season, very successful. Jim Hiller has been on the job with the LA Kings for 111 games. That includes his interim stint last year and his season so far this year. His overall record is 65, 36, and 10. Only 3 other teams have a better record over that span in the NHL than the LA Kings. That's the Winnipeg Jets. 3 other teams have been better. So the Kings would be 4th in that department over that span as far as success. Winnipeg Jets, Dallas Stars, Toronto Maple Leafs, the only other teams in the NHL over 111 game span since Jim Hiller has been head coach that have more wins than the LA Kings, more points. All right. So we look back at those 5 burning questions and how were they answered. Hope you enjoyed that. Up next, we have a Kings injury update and a preview of their game coming up Thursday against the Ducks. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day.
Do you have trouble sleeping? If so, you're not alone. That used to be me, lacking rest, tossing and turning. I was late for meetings. I never felt like myself. That's until I found Bare Mattress. Bare Mattress and their sleep recovery technology helped me fall asleep faster as well as enjoy deeper sleeps. I felt like myself again, and you can too. Bare Mattress knows that every sleeper is different. That's why they have their sleep quiz on their website that finds you your perfect match. As a side sleeper, I matched with the Elite Hybrid mattress, and I've been telling everyone in my life they have to try Bare Mattress risk-free. You can sleep on your Bare Mattress up to 120 nights, and if you're not getting the best sleep of your life, you can get it refunded. They'll pick it up with absolutely no hassle. So go to bearmattress.com and use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout to get 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com. Use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
Happy for my guy, Ross Levitan, who did that Bare Mattress commercial. He's one of the co-hosts of Locked On Senators, and they punched their playoff ticket last night, snapping a 7-year drought of being in the postseason. So congrats to Ross over at Locked On Senators and his Ottawa Senators. All right. Did want to check the standings as we go into tonight's action. The LA Kings, I've already clinched a playoff spot, as you well know. But going into tonight's action on Wednesday, the Kings are 6 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights for first place in the Pacific. Vegas lost in a shootout last night to the Colorado Avalanche. So they did pick up a point, 103 points. Their record is now 47, 22, and 9 through 78 games. The Kings have played 77 games, a record of 44, 24, and 9 for 97 points. So again, 6 points back of the Golden Knights for first in the Pacific. I've said for a while now, I do not believe the Kings are going to catch the Golden Knights. But the real important question is, will they stay ahead of the Edmonton Oilers? The Oilers have not played since the Kings last game as well, so they remain 4 points back of the Kings for second in the Pacific. Edmonton also has played 77 games. Their record, 44 wins, same as the Kings, 28 losses in regulation. That's 4 more than the Kings, and 5 losses in a shootout or overtime compared to 9 for the LA Kings. But the Kings do have the tiebreaker over the Edmonton Oilers. That's regulation wins. The Kings with 39, Edmonton with 32. So again, the Oilers don't just need to catch the Kings. They have to pass the Kings to get that second spot in the Pacific Division. The Oilers are playing a huge game tonight against the red-hot St. Louis Blues. That's going to be a tough game for Edmonton, and they do not have Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, still both hurt. So I would be surprised if the Oilers are able to gain any ground on the Kings coming up tonight. Of course, the Kings have their next game on Thursday against the Anaheim Ducks, and we are going to have an update on the Ducks in just a second, that preview that game. But I did want to give an injury update on the LA Kings, and thanks to friend of the show, Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty, who is always out there at Kings practice. We did find out on Wednesday that there was no Adrian Kempe, no Drew Doughty, no Joel Edmondson, and no Tanner Jeannot at Kings practice, and that sounds really bad. But I think really the only real big question mark in the immediate future is Tanner Jeannot. Kempe's still out due to personal reasons, which we believe is related to his pregnant wife. Hopefully everything's going okay, and we'll get news that Adrian Kempe is a proud papa very soon. I think he'll be the 4th Kings player to welcome a child during this season. Drew Doughty is nursing an issue we believe related to his broken ankle from the preseason, but we do not believe he's going to be out very long. As a matter of fact, I would not be surprised at all if he plays in the game against the Ducks on Thursday, listed as a lower body injury. Joel Edmondson also listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury. I expect him back soon as well. Don't know if it'll be against Anaheim or not, but I think Drew Doughty and Joel Edmondson will definitely be back for Monday's game in Edmonton. Tanner Jeannot, though, week-to-week lower body injury, does not look like he's going to be around for the rest of the regular season. We hope he'll be back in time for the playoffs. There is one bit of good injury news for the Kings, and that's Alex Turcotte. He was at practice, and he was not wearing a red non-contact jersey. He was wearing the normal gray jersey, which means that basically he's back and ready to go, and I would expect to see him in the lineup against the Ducks on Thursday. Matter of fact, as far as with Adrian Kempe out of the lineup, in practice, we did see, or I should say, Russell saw and reported that Alex Turcotte was skating on the top line, the Kopitar line, with Andrei Kopitar and Andrei Kuzmenko. So if Adrian Kempe is still out for his personal reasons on Thursday, it looks like Alex Turcotte would draw into the Kopitar line. All right, after 2 days off, the Kings will be back in action for their final edition of the Freeway Face-Off this season, as they will host our Orange County rivals, the Anaheim Ducks, Thursday night. Kings check in with a record of 44-24-9. Kings are second in the Pacific Division, fifth in the Western Conference, seventh in the NHL with 97 points. They are coming off a disappointing 2-1 home loss to Seattle on Monday. Kings still have the best home record in the NHL, 29-5-4. The Ducks are 34-35-8 on the season. They are in sixth place in the Pacific Division, 12th in the Western Conference, and 25th in the NHL with 76 points. The Ducks have been eliminated from the playoffs. I believe that's 6 years in a row. I think it's the third longest drought in the NHL now that the Senators have snapped their streak. I think only Buffalo and Detroit have longer playoff droughts now than the Ducks. Kings are led in points and goals by Adrian Kempe, 34 points, 33 goals. Kevin Fiala is the only other 30-goal scorer on the team with exactly 30. Kings have two other 20-goal scorers in Warren Fogle with 22 and Quentin Byfield with 20. Andrei Kopitar leads the Kings in assists with 43, and he's second on the team with 62 points. Ducks are led by Troy Terry in points with 53. Anaheim's leading goal scorer is Mason McTavish with 21. He is also second on the team in points with 50. The Ducks have three other 20-goal scorers, Troy Terry, Frank Vetrano, and Lucas Carlson, each with exactly 20. Be interesting to see who the Kings start in net. I would actually go with David Riddick in this one and give Darcy Kemper some rest with two big games against playoff teams coming up. Colorado at home on Saturday and Edmonton on the road on Monday. Now, maybe Hiller will go with Kemper against the Ducks and then Riddick against Colorado. I would expect Darcy, though, to get one game off before that big final regular season meeting in Edmonton. Kemper, 28, 22, and 7 overall with a 2.03 goals against average and a 922 save percentage. He's allowed 2 or fewer goals in 14 straight home games. David Riddick is 15, 13, and 2, 2.71 goals against average, 890 save percentage. However, at home, he's been really good, 11, 2, and 2. 2.11 goals against average and a 913 save percentage. The Ducks will be playing back-to-back games going into the game against the Kings. Anaheim is hosting the Calgary Flames tonight. Then we'll play in LA on Thursday. My guess is Lucas Dostal will get the start against LA with those back-to-back games. He is a up-and-coming goaltender coming off a brilliant 47 save performance and a win over the Oilers in his last start. He is clearly the future in net for the Ducks, and I am sorry to say he looks like he's going to be a pretty legit goalie. Checking the numbers as far as the rankings for the Kings and Ducks, LA checks in 19th in the league in goals scored per game at 2.94. Anaheim is 26th at 2.69. Kings are number 2 in the NHL in goals allowed per game, 2.44. The Ducks are 22nd in the NHL at 3.16. The Kings' power play is 28th in the league, 15.8%. The Ducks are actually worse. They're dead last, 32nd in the NHL at 15.8%. LA is 5th in the league on the penalty kill, 81.7%. The Ducks are 29th at 73.6%. Again, this is the fourth and final meeting between the two teams. Kings have won 2 of the 3 meetings so far this year, although Anaheim did win the last meeting, a 2-1 overtime win on February the 8th. Overall, last 3 seasons, the Kings have won 11 of 14 meetings against the Ducks. Face-off on Thursday, set for 7 p.m. LA time. You can see it locally on the FanDuel Sports Network, nationally on ESPN+, and you can hear it on the 710 ESPN app. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Thursday, Kings longtime play-by-play man Nick Nixon is going to be joining us to talk about the Kings season and a bit about his final season calling games in the NHL. And then shortly after the conclusion of the Kings-Ducks game, we will have a recap show of that one. And then on Friday night, our weekly Kings fan feedback show. Hope you will join us for all of those special episodes coming up here on Locked On LA Kings. If you want to send an email for the feedback show or for any other reason, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You're always welcome to post your thoughts on the show if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. We would love for you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you in our next show. And as always, go Kings, go.